Welcome back to the next episode of the Keto Naturopath on YouTube. And if I sound a little tired, it's because I've just had to redo this particular episode 4 times. And it's not because it's highly complicated. It's because I forgot something very simple to do, like turn on the microphone twice. So with that, I've gone through it again and again and again. And I'm just going to simplify it. Sometimes it's best just to talk off the top of your head of what you know instead of showing a lot of different slides or something. So today we're going to talk about berberine and why it's so important to you to consider if you have a number of different situations, primarily diabetes, primarily blood glucose problems, and all the derivative issues that come from there, like immune problems and neurological problems and arthritic problems, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to talk about a little bit of the origin of it, Chinese medicine to North American botanical medicine, and to move on to it as a supplement of berberine as a constituent, and where it compares to metformin. So it sounds highly complicated, but I can give it to you in a few sentences, okay? So I hope it's not too simple for you and you feel cheated for your time. I want to make this worthwhile for your time, absolutely. So berberine obviously has been getting a lot of attention lately on YouTube. But guess what? Before YouTube, it got a lot of attention worldwide, and there's well over 5,000 studies, papers, done on berberine exclusively, and not all about blood sugar control, and not all about weight loss. In fact, there is, and I'll probably mention this again, excuse the repetition, remember I'm trying to simplify, there's over 27 placebo-controlled crossover studies that have been done on berberine to show how effective it is in so many different situations. And then they've never done that even on any one pharmaceutical drug that's on the market. So this has been super studied. Or I won't say overstudied. There's probably even more. Every time you study something, there's another question that pops up. You answer sort of the question you're after, and it becomes something even better. Well, what about this? So that's what's happened with berberine. But I want to give you a little history so you see where it came from. And with that, I guess I should reintroduce myself because I want to give you a little bit of my educational background. And that is that I'm a naturopathic doctor. So graduated Bastyr in '98. Shh, don't say that to everybody. And same time, I had a master's of science in acupuncture, and a year and a half later, passed Chinese Herbal Medicine 4-year program and board certified in acupuncture and herbal medicine and environmental medicine a couple of years later. So that is my background. So why do I say that? Not so much, guys, this guy studied a lot. Well, that's sort of an understatement. But it's more that it's relevant to this particular topic because berberine started, understanding the effects of berberine started in Chinese herbal medicine. And as a medicine, it's documented well over 2,000 years. I think it's closer to 3 or 4. Ayurvedic is a little bit older medicine, but not as well documented, should you want to know. Okay, so in Chinese herbal medicine, they have a number of herbs that are high constituents of berberine and other things. That's what an herb has, a lot of different things. It doesn't have just one thing. But it does have a high amount of berberine, and that's philodendron, that's coptis, of course, that's scutellaria, bicalensis, and a few others. Who cares? They're just very high, and they're famous. They're used a lot. And there's this one formula, it's called 3 yellows in the garden. Yellow is the color of berberine, by the way. So berberine is in the bark, it's in the stem, and it's in the root, in the stem of the root. And you would know that because if you live in North America, if you are near Oregon grape or barberry bush, or what else am I thinking about? Golden seal, of course. When you snap open that root, it is like brilliantly gold. It has a nice kind of bitter smell to it, and it is very bitter tasting. So berberine and all the herbs it contain are very bitter herbs. So what's the big deal? Well, bitter herbs in Chinese herbal medicine are very specific, by the way, that they treat a thing called dampness. Dampness is diabetes, type 1 diabetes, type 2 diabetes, and all the issues that come from that. So all the issues that come from that are rheumatoid arthritis, it's not just inflammation, it's immunological issues, it's cerebral issues, it's heart issues, just like we talked today about metabolic syndrome, type 2 diabetes. It's really a cerebrovascular, cardiovascular, venovascular problem that has to be addressed. So anyway, so that's berberine and how it's addressed it treats dampness. Dampness, the opposite of dampness is dry. You have to dry up the dampness and you get very specific to the part of the body and so on and so forth. But I'm leaving you with that general aspect and say that dampness represents, in our way of thinking, diabetes, type 1 and type 2, rheumatoid arthritis, and leave it at that. It's far more complicated, but leave it at that. The interesting thing that I really want to pass on to you about my respect for Chinese herbal medicine, Chinese TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, is that there's this ultimate balancing between liver and what they call a spleen. Spleen today is the pancreas. So it's the balance between the liver and the pancreas. Pancreas produces insulin, produces glucagon, which goes to the liver to produce glucose, which the insulin has to balance. So it's always been about, today's issues are always about balancing liver with pancreas. It's 90% of all medical ills are about blood glucose levels and the control thereof. So it's amazing. Over 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, it was the same thing. And you go, wait a minute, I thought diabetes today was about like environmental toxicity and all this processed food. Clearly that's made it worse, but these same conditions pre-existed our processed foods as well. I'm sure corporate food industry manufacturers will love what I just said, but what I am saying that it pre-existed, it has been treated, and those same ways can be used to treat what we're doing now. It just got far worse, far, far worse. Okay, so that was berberine, Oriental medicine, cures damp, and it overlaps with metformin. Metformin, otherwise known as glucophage, also came from an herb. It came from an herb in France called French lilac. And so in 1922, it was isolated, just like berberine was isolated from all these herbs in Chinese herbal medicine in North America. It was isolated from French lilac, and it's a guanine, a whole different molecular approach, and it overlaps in the sense that it lowers blood glucose levels, which is good if you have those damp issues, diabetes, so on and so forth. So let's go on from there. It's a fascinating story, I tell you. And there's almost nothing but good news here. We'll have a few cautionary notes, but I don't see any big stop signs there saying, no, this is going to kill you if you do this. In fact, this is actually, the studies have gone so far in those 5,000 studies and 27, placebo-controlled double crossover research studies, which is never done on an herb, by the way. It's never done on a supplement. Like pharmaceuticals don't have an opportunity to come in here other than they synthesize something, but they can't patent it, as I understand this now. Even in regards to cancer and so on and so forth. Okay, so basically it comes down to 4 aspects, and I'll tell you about 6 after this. So 4 aspects are unique to berberine properties. So berberine, the constituent, not the herb, berberine, the constituent. 4 areas: detoxification, that's liver, right? Cell cycle arrest, that's about cancer, so it doesn't keep reproducing this malformation and so on and so forth. Apoptosis, helping things that are not appropriately working to off themselves. It's called cell suicide. AMPK, AMP kinase activation, that is what they call the master metabolic switch. It's somebody reaching in there and pulling it back to change it all. Can one herb do that? This is the fantasy of biohackers. Absolutely. Berberine is the fantasy of biohackers. And I caution you on that because nothing is that way, but it does a lot of different things. Okay, detoxification, berberine complex boosts glutathione, that's an antioxidant, highly desirable for any state of health, correct. Berberine is synergistic with milk thistle, which is another, if you're in the naturopathic field, you hear about milk thistle from your day one. So it's the seeds of the milk thistle that are ground down. Cell cycle arrest, talked about that. Repairs damaged DNA, may stop cancer, prevent damaged DNA from replicating, which is kind of the source of cancer. Apoptosis is when cell is too badly damaged, so commit suicide. Activates AMPK pathway, boosts mitochondrial energy production. Huge among, this topic is huge among anti-aging scientists. That's all they want to do. Anything that activates this pathway is vital to anti-aging, weight loss, body strength, and basically health. Berberine is used to treat high blood pressure, modulate heart function, high blood sugar, cardiac output, liver detox due to the fact that it's a powerful activator of AMPK. Berberine has beneficial effects of blood pressure, cholesterol, blood sugar. Is a powerful neuroprotector. Actually, new research coming out just a month ago from China, in part by improving mitochondrial health and function. So 27 double-blind, placebo-controlled trials have shown berberine to produce results on par with drugs for hypertension, blood glucose lowering drugs, high cholesterol, statins. That's the most profitable drug ever made, the statins category, and type 2 diabetes, metformin. That's incredible. That's incredible. So probably there's reason there's so many studies is because the pharmaceuticals are saying we got to find something wrong with this. How do we get into this game? All right, so this is actually from, it's a post I've taken from the American Association of the Naturopathic Physicians, AANP. 6 potential benefits of berberine you should know about. It's natural supplements, Berberine is from Chinese medicine. The natural supplement is a yellow compound found in roots, rhizomes, stems, barks of many plant species. Yep. Gold thread is called coptis, and that's Chinese herbal medicine. Oregon grape and barberry. The bright yellow compound, which is a class of isoquinoline alkaloid, is a lot of attention now. Cholesterol lowering. We'll see that in the lab. So we're going to end up looking at some lab results to show you that that's actually true. I wouldn't have believed that. Berberine may fight cancer, improve symptoms, ulcerative colitis, and irritable bowel syndrome. So the reason it does that is because it's actually an antibiotic. There's plenty of studies that shows that berberine is used as an antibiotic against a thing called Staph aureus. Staph aureus actually is famous for a lot of GI dysbiosis, is when one bacteria gets to be too big, and fungal infections and so on. So it really helps reduce that particular population and get you back to a normal, healthy microbiome. Staph aureus is also famous for earaches. So if anybody grew up on swim team as a little kid and had a lot of ear infections, it's because of that. And anybody who has children that are big dairy and milk consumers, they get a lot of earaches. That's Staph aureus. Okay, potential benefits of berberine. It's antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory. It is used to treat bacteria, fungus, parasites, viruses, and others. It sounds too good to be true, right? So if I just told you that, you'd think I was pitching you on the next new thing. So if I didn't tell you that, oh, about those 5,000 studies, or about the 27 placebo-controlled double crossover, now you're paying attention. Okay then, glad you're paying attention. Because it's antimicrobial, it does a lot of good. Okay, so what I don't want you to get into thinking is like, this is my panacea. This is my one pill and it's going to change my life. No, you still have work to do, and that's where we're going to end up this discussion, by the way, is it is a big help. But you still have your part to do. Low blood sugar. You can read through this afterwards should you want to. Lower cholesterol, I've already said that. Here is interesting. Prevent recurring urinary tract infections and cystitis. Now, in one way, of course, that's true because UTIs are secondary to, caused by chronically elevated blood glucose levels. So bladder gets congested with sugar, sugar foments fungal infections and bacterial infections, and that's where the UTI comes from. Cystitis is pretty similar. Okay, there's that. Lose weight, of course. Find digestive relief. I would say bacterial overgrowth, otherwise known as dysbiosis, especially Staph aureus, You know, if it works for you, perfect. It might not work for other people that don't have a problem. So you can't just take it and say, I'm going to be normal and all going to be perfect. No, you have to have a problem to have this work well for you. But, okay, it may help with certain cancers. Colorectal polyps, well, that makes sense. If we're changing the microbiome, maybe we're changing the environment in which polyps would grow less easily. And that's exactly what happens. So I wanted to go over, you heard this thing called AMPK. Who cares, right? AMP kinase. Well, it activates this, and it's kind of like the mother switch. All right, what does it do? What it does, something really interesting. First of all, it stops the liver from producing glucose. It says, you know, that gluconeogenesis, we're not doing it anymore. Don't do it. I don't care what the pancreas tells you to do. Do not produce glucose. Okay, then. And by the way, don't even produce glycogen, which is the storing form. Just stop all that. And at the same time, it upregulates glucose absorption. So what we're doing, if you're measuring a blood glucose level in your blood, it's being driven down because we're not producing endogenous glucose, and we're sucking it off by glucose uptake. We're increasing fat burning. So beta oxidation is fat burning. So that says, well, that's why the fat, not just weight loss, but fat loss is accelerated. It increases mitophagy. Mitophagy is the mitochondria. It's like killing the mitochondria that are just not doing very well and potentially carcinogenic, right? They're going to evolve into cancers. And autophagy. Here's the big picture. I mean, this comes from, we're not going to go into this, but this comes from cell signaling. It's so technical in terms of why berberine is affecting AMPK, and look at all the things that AMPK affect. There's GLUT4, that's glucose 4 receptor. It's a big deal. There's 5 different types of problems of people can't bring in the glucose, so they have this problem. They can't even use glucose very well. McCurdle's disease is one of those. So that's the short of it. That's the short of the arm, is a shot in the arm by saying it is a big deal, it's well studied, and this rock isn't moving. It is solid. But now let's go to look at a lab. Something, you know, when you hear all these people talk about, well, berberine is, hey, you might want to take berberine. Wouldn't you just ask them, well, do you have any experience with your patients, your doctor, right? You've practiced for 10 or 20 or 30 or 50 years. So what do their labs look like when they're on berberine? Oh, you don't know. You just read a study someplace that said it was a good idea. Okay, all right. Let me show you some labs. And by the way, this is how I work. You take labs of people. They're on something, you find out what they're on, you take labs, and these people come because they want to be in our program or something, for a lot of reasons. Primarily, I want to be in our program. Okay, let's get into that. So here we are looking at a blinding number of labs, and let you know that should you ever work with me or anybody else, I anonymously put you into this spreadsheet, you know, and I have a code that gives me age and gender and poundage or weight, and then there's another page for chief complaints. And what was the issue that you really wanted to look at? Usually it's about weight, by the way. So we're going to look at, I mean, there's a lot of numbers. I love seeing patterns. You know, things don't happen out of the blue like, oh my gosh, I just turned diabetic at like 65. No, there's a lot of other signs that are like pre-existed that you could see 30 years ago, but nobody decided to look at it. Or you decided not to look at it. So you're part of this. And my whole shtick, if you will, is about encouraging people to take more responsibility, understanding some of this medicalese. You know, it's not like a special little Greek language over there that that you have to go study 16 years. Nope, not at all. There's some that you can get it at the end of your first paragraph of reading through this, and that's where I come in. I hope that's where I come in. All right, so let's look at some of this. So what we have is somebody over here on the far left, right? And this is a person who was on berberine. And so I go, okay, you know, he thought, I'm on berberine. I'm good. Yeah, they think I'm diabetic, but I'm on Berberine, so I've been good for the last 5 or 10 years. I haven't really had to do anything. So we did the panel. He was heavy. He was heavy, so he was worried about him being heavy, but he didn't worry about him being diabetic or any of the sequelae, any of the issues that could cause for him in his life. Not least short life. Okay, so what he has is, let's start from the top. He has fairly high inflammation. So his fasting glucose was 179. The range is like up to 99. He goes, huh, yeah, I knew that was high sometime, but my doc didn't tell me about that. How would your doc not tell you that you have a 179 glucose? Hemoglobin, 6.5. Well, it was 6.6. He would be a textbook diabetic. So he's like a point away. He's way beyond, he's like at the extreme end of pre-diabetic. He's like kissing diabetes, which means he probably had a good day. His insulin is 16.3. It should be like around 2. So I don't know. I think somebody should be talking to him, but nobody ever took his insulin before. Nobody ever took his insulin before, and he's nearly 50. Triglycerides, 249, call it 250. It should be around 70. His HDL could easily, with a little coaching, be around 100. So put it this way, he's insulin resistant across the board. I don't have to go any further. Across the board, he's insulin resistant. So for him, he's looking at this data as like saying, I thought I was doing pretty well. So you got to be careful when you talk to somebody like that, not because it's man or woman or age or anything like that. It's like you got to give them a little more information beyond where they are to say, hey, this is an issue. You really got to take care of this for yourself, for your wife, for your kids, or whoever you think you're living for, who depends on you. Okay, so now I want to go to check their. So what we found out here is the glucagon, right? So glucagon is from the pancreas to the liver. Remember that? Pancreas, spleen to liver. Chinese medicine, balancing those two. So it's the pancreas going to the liver saying, make more glucose. But he's on berberine, and he had lower by half than everybody else, except for this guy over here and a whole different story. Lower by half. So I would definitely say that berberine shuts down or dramatically reduces the glucagon stress hormone to tell liver to produce glucose, or to even produce glycogen, which is the storage form of glucose. So here we are in the complete liver panel over here. You saw the 249 for the triglycerides and the HDL. You saw that before, and that's that ratio. It's terrible. Anything over 1.5 is likely insulin resistant. He's like 6.38. He's off the planet. But his cholesterol, his total cholesterol is fine. His doctor patted him on the back and said, that away. Good boy, 177. Can you imagine that? I don't know how he missed the insulin of 179, but 177 for total cholesterol. This guy thought, wow, you're great, and you're not on statins? That's remarkable. You're doing great. Yeah, well, he didn't look at all this other stuff. Anyway, I wanted to show you that yes, it brings down cholesterol, and yes, it brings down blood sugar it brings down the glucagon aspect of creating increased blood sugar. He still had a 179. So the point I want to end up on is that do not think this is your panacea. It is a remarkable substance. It is a remarkable constituent of a number of very historically potent herbs and herbal formulations across the globe for the most part. Yet, there's kind of a laziness that gets induced when you think, I'm just taking this little pill, and I have the inside secret to how to take care of me. He felt so sure, so smug about that. And maybe berberine does all these other things to counteract all these other way out of range labs. Maybe that's the case. That's beyond the 27 studies or the 5,000 papers. So what I'm arguing is some caution there by saying, don't rest everything on one pill. I don't care. It's the same mentality of going to your doctor, and you can argue against statins, but then you go to something else. It's still the same mentality. Open it up. He still has work to do. He still has to drop the carbs. And after that, he can go on the protein-sparing modified fast, and he'll probably do incredibly well. It would be absolutely right up his alley. The degree that he complied and learned to have a lifestyle around this. Maybe he's an individual that doesn't want to make that change. You know, they're so stuck in their ways, they have to have what they want to have when they have it, period. You know, they're an adult, they've earned that right. Well, you earn that right to stroke out in front of your kids. You earn that right to have a heart attack in front of your kids. You earn that right. I'm hoping for better things. Till next time, take care. Bye-bye.